Saw 6 is definitely a pretty good film. I'm not sure where I'd rank it compared to the others. Not yet anyway. I will at some point attempt to rank them. But for now, I'm quite happy with it. This was released in 2009. It's directed by Kevin Grutert and picks up, of course, where the previous film left off. But as always, we have some flashbacks. There will be spoilers. Well, there probably will be spoilers in this discussion for previous films, but I won't spoil anything in this film. And as always, we have the main narrative revolving around who is currently doing the Jigsaw killings and John's legacy and various people who are trying to carry this out. And then we have the people who are playing the games, if you like. And this is the first time where I've looked at one of the victims and thought, well, almost thought, yeah, you deserve this. Obviously, I don't actually think anybody should be tortured, but here we had somebody who was basically playing God with medical insurance, and it was the first person I've looked at and thought, you're nasty. He had a nasty personality, he was a nasty character, and I could at least understand the reasoning, even though obviously I don't actually agree with torture. But yeah, this was the first time I was actually kind of emotionally invested in what would happen to the character and what journey they would go on, and it was quite fascinating. With regards to Hoffman, things seemed to be closing in on Hoffman, and the whole thing about Strom's fingerprints were really fascinating. I can't say too much about it, but it was pretty interesting. I think explained well enough that it was easy to follow without giving away too much, I think, and it definitely took some interesting directions that I perhaps hadn't anticipated, which I liked. It is quite a complex narrative. I'm finding that, well, actually, I feel like the previous film, the fifth film, was even more complex, but this one still had quite a lot going on. It's not impossible to follow, but it's definitely one of those films where you need to be paying full attention, because if you miss even the tiniest detail, it's difficult to connect the dots. But that's also, it works well for me because I'm watching all of these back to back, basically. But there are things in this film that refer to previous films, and had I not watched the other Saw film since it was in the cinema the year before, I would have forgotten some details, and I think that would have annoyed me. So it definitely would work better if you watch these all back to back if you can, unless you have an amazing memory, which I don't, because there are things that connect to the previous films, which is good. It's well written. We have a really great story arc that carries everything across all of these films, but it does mean you have to remember things, and not everybody is going to like that. For example, it's the same situation with Marvel, but because I haven't watched Marvel films back to back, whenever I try and watch one, I don't understand half the references. So I can imagine that this could be a similar experience here if you've maybe not seen the others in a while or don't remember them very well. But watching them back to back, things connect pretty well, and we start to get more and more answers. But also, it does also raise more and more questions as we go through. Ultimately well crafted, but you need to pay attention. Otherwise, blink and you miss it, put it that way. And in terms of being scary, it isn't. Absolutely not. I feel like, and I said this last time, and I think even more so now, there was maybe one moment in this where I, felt a bit squeamish. I didn't really like looking at it, but it was well done. But I feel like the films as they're going on are focusing less on the torture, less on the gore, and more on the complex narrative. Which is a shame, because I like that intense feeling of watching a horror in the comfort of my own home. And I'm not getting that feeling where you're clenching everything together and you're hunched over. That's how I felt with the first two, maybe three films. I don't have that feeling, and I haven't for the last few films, which is such a shame. So I'm becoming more invested in the narrative and the characters, but finding that they're becoming less scary. So I really don't know how it's going to play out as we go through the next few films, but I'm looking forward to them. We've only had 1 week link so far. Thankfully, Saw 6 was pretty good. Feeling very hopeful for the next one.